The result at the end of the Monaco Grand Prix reads exactly the same order, but that in no way tells the story of what was a thrilling afternoon around the grandest Grand Prix circuit of them all here in Monaco. Welcome to your post-race show, folks, here in the paddock in Monaco with me, Will Bucks, and I'm delighted to be joined by Formula One and Le Mans. Oh, should we just say all-round motorsport legend, Alan McNish?
Oh, thank you very much there, Will. It's very kind of you. I think we're going to call you the weatherman now, because you were the one that predicted the reason that actually there was a lot more excitement than maybe what we initially thought was going to happen here.
Michael Fish. That's well, there was a lot of data coming in on that. We had so many radar screenshots being sent to us in the lead up to the race. It was at the start of the Grand Prix, about 15 kilometers north of the circuit, heading east, gradually south, and as the race progressed, varying calls to the drivers of it would arrive with 10 laps to go, it would arrive in 10 minutes time. But when it did arrive, Alan, it arrived in one specific part of the circuit, it arrived fast, and it came down hard.
Yeah, it came in from the Italian Riviera, and there's a couple of hills between where we saw it initially in the first camera shots, and that normally it dissipates when it comes over those hills, but it didn't. It held enough, actually, so there was a dump of rain, but exactly as you say, it was at one end of the circuit. It was from the Casino Square on the drive down to Mirabeau, and then to the hairpin, and then into the tunnel, and then you came out of the tunnel, and it was like a different condition again. So it's quite strategically difficult, I would say, it initially for the teams to know what to do. However, it was quite clear, some got it right, and some didn't.
What we have witnessed today was a phenomenal drive from Max Verstappen in all conditions, and in order to get himself into a position where that was possible, he had to make that set of medium tires last for 56 laps at full tilt. It was a brilliant drive.
Well, I think the brilliant drive was actually yesterday, the start of that, because if he wasn't on pole position, he wouldn't have led into the first corner, and then he would have been on the back foot. So ultimately, his last sector yesterday delivered him the chance, and then he was able to execute it. He had pace, there's no question. He had the legs on Fernando Alonso. However, when it got later on, when you saw the graining on that tyre, and they were trying to work and to keep him out in case there was a bit of weather came in, then to keep their strategy options open, then it was a very, very good execution by him.
Had he not been able to do that, he would have had to come in, change onto the tyres, and then change again. As it was Fernando Alonso.
Yes,
who had to change again, because he came in and changed onto the mediums and then had to change again onto the inters.
And the issue, though, for Max Verstappen was that Fernando was always sitting around about 10 seconds behind. So he had got a bit of a gap, but not enough. You know, a pit stop's 20 seconds. That's the window you needed. And he was about 10. And then traffic came when they started to lap other cars, and that came down to under 5 seconds at one point. And at that moment, you know, you then have to work, and you have to work the tyre to gain the time back again. So there was no relaxation in this one. Even though it looked easy, actually, he was doing a lot of work in the cockpit.
We'll talk about Aston Martin's decision to pit Fernando for mediums and then again for inters a little bit later in the show. But a word for Esteban Ocon. The fans voted him driver of the day. He held on for his third career podium. I just think, I'm not actually, he didn't hold on. I thought he fought valiantly today. He was under massive pressure, first from the Ferraris, then from the Mercedes, in all conditions. Again, another beautiful drive.
Well, effectively, he drove nearly 2 hours, 78 laps, in very changing conditions with another car 1 second behind him, maximum, all Grand Prix. And he didn't put a foot wrong. Didn't put a foot wrong at any point, and I think he delivered a very strong performance. It was really good to see. Now, it is difficult to overtake around here, but we have seen mistakes happening. And in that situation, then he deserves a third place. There's no question about it. And for the team as well, there was a lot of pressure from the gods above this weekend. They wanted a delivery of a result, and this definitely, I would say, is a relief in the Alpine camp, I would say, right now. The way, thank goodness for that. It's not just a podium, it's a Monaco podium.
Well, and it's not just relief for Alpine as a team, it's relief for Otmar Szafnauer, their boss, who's under massive pressure at the top of that team. The closest thing that Alpine have got to a home race is the closest thing that Esteban Ocon's got to a home race. He brought it home on the podium, and Laura Winter, who is somewhere in the paddock, I'm not sure where, but I'm just hearing she's actually got Otmar Szafnauer with her now.
Well, Otmar, P3, a third podium for Esteban Ocon, and a double points haul for Alpine today. The defence that Esteban showed against Carlos Sainz, against Lewis Hamilton, was pretty majestic, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it's no different than he did in Suzuka in the wet, and we reminded him of that. Not that he needed reminding, but we did, and he did a great job. And let's not forget Pierre. You know, he started 7th. It's hard to overtake here. He finished 7th, and you know he had all the rain to contend with and all sorts of other things. And I mean, you saw people going off, and you know, even some of the front runners going off. The drivers did a great job today.
Can you try and sum up how difficult it was out there? I know you may have just been on pit wall, but I'm sure you were getting feedback to how challenging these conditions truly were, and what a driving masterclass we've seen today.
Yeah, it is challenging, and it's most challenging when it's changeable. So when you're on slicks and it just starts raining, but you want to stay out because it's only part of the track, that's when it's really challenging. And every lap when you go by, it's a little bit different, and you're trying to stay right at the edge of grip, but it's always changing. So that's what makes it really hard, and they did a good job.
How much pressure does this relieve for you guys internally? I know after Laurent Rossi's comments about the start to the season not being up to the standard you expect.
Well, you know, it's we unless you're winning, every team puts pressure on itself, and we do that internally. You know, we work really hard, and we know what it takes to do well in Formula One. So I don't think now that we're on the podium, you know, we're going to be relaxing. So it'll be the same. We keep working.
Great stuff. Thanks, Otmar. Congratulations today.
I'd love to hear from Otmar Saf now, and we have been joined by a man who knows what it feels like to stand on top of that Monaco podium on Grand Prix Sunday, Frédéric Vesti, F2 race winner, Mercedes Junior, of course, now championship leader in F2 as well. Wild weekend here in Monaco in F2, but what does that feel like, standing on that legendary podium here?
Well, it's what all of us dream of. It's what we work so hard for, and especially here in Monaco. If I think any driver would choose one track to win and do pole position, it's definitely this one. It's just different, and it's a different track, you know, and it means so much to me.
And a huge result, of course, for the team today as well, for Mercedes in the Grand Prix. A really good sort of haul of points after that new upgrade package on the car too. What's the vibe like at Mercedes right now?
Yeah, it was good. I think especially Lewis was very happy with the result. In P4, that was a very good job. For myself, I was there watching it with the radio, which was really cool, getting some insight both on the strategy and the driver.
And so from the point of view, your race here, one thing that I always found difficult when I was racing was when there was a red flag or a stoppage and you had to then mentally reset to go again. How was that for you? Because this is not just your average race, you know, Monaco, and also preparation for the first restart and then into the first corner. How did it work out?
Yeah, it's really difficult because you're in the rhythm, you're fighting, and everything is feeling good when you're in the lead, and suddenly there is the safety car and then into the red flag. And luckily, I had a good start and a good pit stop, so all of the big pressure things was already done. So I saw it a bit as a sprint race to the flag, 15 laps, where I had to just do the best I could and try to pull a gap.
And the challenge of this place, F2 cars aren't doing that much different lap times around here than Formula One cars. What is it like to be in that tunnel, that focus point of almost kind of a flow state around this circuit?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. To be honest, if I try to think back, I can't remember much of the race. I think you're just so much in the zone and just so much under pressure and just trying to make every detail as best as possible. 1 centimeter too tight on a corner and you're in the wall, and the race can be finished in seconds. So, you know, you really have to look ahead and then just try to go as fast as possible, but also you cannot take too much risk.
But you said you don't remember much of the race. I can understand that, but I guarantee you'll remember the podium.
Yeah, of course. The podium, the celebration with the team as well. And of course I remember some of the race, but there is definitely some blur because the focus is just crazy. But no doubt that this day will be with me forever.
And for you, Toto? I'm sure he was very supportive of you, clearly from the support that he's given you and your team, but to actually then deliver it, that it would be, I would say, something that he would appreciate, that result, because this isn't your average circuit. It's not the one that, you know, you just go out there and pick up an easy victory.
Yeah, it's good to have his support and to be backed by Mercedes is incredible. It's a dream from a long time, and it took almost 3 years to convince them, but here we are, and I'm doing everything I can.
I want to switch focus to the Grand Prix very quickly if we can. When the rain falls and you've got to try and keep a car on slick tires on the track where it's only slippery in one part of the circuit. How tough is that?
Well, it's probably the driver's worst nightmare. It's really difficult, and I had the radio, so I could hear the drivers, and you could clearly feel that they were under pressure because they are used to a dry track. They are pushing as much as they can, and all of a sudden, without big warning, the conditions change. And being on slicks with such a wet track is very tricky. And again, you need to manage the risk if you go.
But did the team actually expect that amount of rain? Because that was something that I was personally surprised. I expected rain, but not the deluge that we actually had.
From the perspective I had and the information I had access to, it seemed like they were pretty much in control of the situation with the rain coming. I think it's difficult for them to say the exact amount, but looking at what they did and the choice they made on the intermediate, it looked pretty good.
Lovely stuff. Thank you so much for coming on the show, mate. We really appreciate it. Best of luck in Spain. Just a few days, you go again.
Yeah, exactly. Back in Barcelona next weekend, and really excited for it.
Lovely stuff, man. Thanks so much for coming on the show. We appreciate you being here. Thanks very much. Lovely stuff. It's okay. You can. It's all good. Great lad, absolutely great. And a great result for Mercedes today. I think, we haven't mentioned that yet. Really, Hamilton P4, Russell P5. Some frustration in George Russell's voice at one point, but he really dropped off towards the end.
No, he did drop off towards the end because at the end of the day, he was looking at that 5-second penalty that he was going to have. And there was a potential with the speed he was catching up on Lewis Hamilton when it was quite wet and Hamilton was blocked behind Ocon. If he had been able to get past Lewis, which would have been obviously a team order, then had to go Ocon, he could have finished third in reality. So he had pace to do it, but not all the way through that intermediate period. When it dried out, it seemed to go away from him. And then after that, he was just thinking about conserving his position. But as you said, very good in the points for them as well, because Ferrari, they had what we would, well, it certainly wasn't a shocker, but it wasn't a fantastic result, that's for sure.
Yeah. 2 Ferraris in the top 10 as well. We'll cover that off in a minute because there's an awful lot to unpack with that. But also 2 McLarens in the top 10 on a weekend that they celebrate the Triple Crown of Motorsport. I have to say, I think it's the first time I've ever heard of a team celebrating having the Triple Crown of Motorsport. It's usually a driver achievement, but they're celebrating it nevertheless.
There's only one driver achieved it.
Very true.
Hill.
Whether you consider it to be the Monaco Grand Prix plus Le Mans and Indy or the World Championship, as Graham Hill did consider it to be the World Championship. Of course, Fernando could have done. Fernando could have done with those couple of Indy 500 runs, but it's only Graham Hill. McLaren this weekend, a P9, a P10 for them in what's been a very difficult season. Will this be some salve, some ointment to the wound of what this season is?
I think the 2 cars in the points, definitely. I think for Oscar Piastri, yes, because he was actually very competitive in the race, all the way through the race relative to Lando Norris. And if we go back to Friday, there was a time delta between him and Norris. I think for Norris, then it would have been probably the other way around. I think there would be a bit of disappointment because he definitely had more speed in the car. If he had been able to deliver it into qualifying, he obviously had the incident, then I think he would have been in the top 6.
And this is it, isn't it? We were looking all the way through the weekend. His pace was so much more than we thought the car was able to give him. This is one of those tracks where a driver can make that difference, can turn it on. And Lando was doing it and just took that small bite too much out of the exit of the chicane.
Yeah, and ultimately that probably is why the pace was there, because there was maybe a few small bites that we didn't see that he got away with, but he didn't get away with it. Touched the barrier out of the chicane, went in it to back, and that was effectively, I would say the momentum out of his weekend gone. But it's, I would say, a reasonable, strong result, and they'll go away thinking, yeah, we had some pace, and that's something that hasn't been consistently there so far.
Piastri narrowly missing out on the top 10 in qualifying, getting himself into the top 10 in the race, getting himself onto the post-race show as well. Hello, Oscar, how are you?
I'm very comfortable in this chair,
well,
I must say.
We think we might make this a regular thing now,
please.
doing it, yeah?
Yes.
All good.
How's your head?
Sorry?
How's your head after nearly 2 hours round here?
Tired. It was a pretty eventful first Monaco Grand Prix, but no, a lot of concentration needed. I think the first half of the race, everyone goes quite slow, just managing the tires, and I think in these cars overtaking is literally impossible. So you just got to try and manage something with the strategy. So that part of the race was simple enough, but once it rained, that was pretty spicy in a few places. But nice to have my first time in an F1 car on slicks in the rain around Monaco done. So yeah, thrown in at the deep end, that's for sure.
You say overtaking here in Monaco is literally impossible. You proved the literally impossible to be possible today, though.
Okay, on inters, in the rain makes it possible. In the dry, it's really, really difficult. And then on the inters, Yuki seemed to be really struggling. So, the pace deficit was massive. DRS was a very welcome surprise on that straight. So yeah, managed to go around the outside. Thought I'd outbroke myself and thrown it all away. When I locked the right front, the wall comes very quickly at you when you've got 3 wheels doing braking, not 4. But yeah, managed to make it stick, and then from there just consolidated the 10th place.
I think I heard on the commentary Alan take a bit of a step back from the screen at that
pulled
moment.
my knees up.
Yeah,
you
it
could see,
was.
I was holding
yes.
on. Oh.
Yeah, it was a pretty nervous moment when it grabbed, but I think at that point it was starting to dry out a bit, so it still slowed me down a bit more than what it would have done if it was fully wet.
But when you said about it a little bit there, when it rained, it was a bit spicy. To be honest with you, it looked treacherous,
Yes.
especially down in the slow section, Mirabeau, down into the hairpin. There were some cars struggling to get around the corner. Tell us what it was like for grip, because in the comms box, it didn't look like there was a lot.
It was terrible. From like turn 5 to turn 8.
No, you've got to use the real names, not turn 5 to turn 8. We want to hear Mirabeau,
Lowe's,
that's it.
whatever the next two are.
Lowe's, I like that.
Yep.
He's old school.
Portier, those corners were really tricky. And to be honest, I was actually quite happy that I had Max right in front of me, because I thought if there's anyone that's got some experience with this, he's leading the race, it's probably going to be a good reference. So I was trying to go a little bit quicker than him, but not a lot quicker than him.
But you were quicker than him at that point. There was a point where you're 4 or 5 seconds behind him, and then you caught him up, and I was actually quite interested whether you were going to overtake him, or alternatively he was going to say, on you go.
Yeah, at that point, slicks in the rain. I didn't really fancy becoming a headline of taking out the race leader in Monaco, to be honest. But yeah, it was just really tricky. And at those low speeds, it's when we've got virtually no downforce left on the car relative to the high speed, so we don't have much grip anyway. And then you've got wet tyres that are cooling down massively as well, wet paint everywhere. It was very, very tricky.
Something that Alan was talking about in commentary is the karting line that you guys often go into when it's wet, which is not the racing line, way off the racing line, because there isn't that rubber laid down, so it's not slippery when the water falls. How much tougher is it to find that grip on a circuit where there is really only one line?
It's tricky. Normally in a lot of places you would try and use the karting line to try and stay off the rubber, but here you don't really have space to do that. And everyone ends up driving the same line, and that becomes the driest part. The biggest difficulty around here is just staying off the paint and the white lines, the curbs and stuff like that. Especially like turn 7 after lows. It's one lap I hit the curb, and I think I was keyed up on the radio saying it was slippery, and then we got about that close to the wall and went, it's really slippery.
I think it was about that close to the wall.
It was very, very tight. So it was tricky, and that was the biggest thing to try and avoid today, was just the white lines. The rest was just try and keep it between the walls as fast as you can.
Got to let you go. One word though, to sum up your first Monaco.
Enjoyable.
Good. Glad.
Thank you.
Lovely. We'll see you in Spain in a few days, mate. Thank you for coming on.
See you in Spain.
I appreciate it. Great drive
Cheers,
today,
guys.
by the way. Great drive.
Thank you.
You did well.
Yeah, it was a strong performance, and I think it gives him a bit of confidence. We've got to remember, he did win in Formula 3, won the championship. He did win in Formula 2, won the championship.
He's got a bit of
away.
pedigree.
He has got a bit of something in there, but ultimately he's got to deliver at the highest level, and he has got a very fast and experienced teammate in Lando Norris. And that's where I think the race itself and the competitiveness in the race relative to Lando stands him in very good stead for the rest of the season.
Right, we said we were going to talk about Ferrari. We will talk about Ferrari now, because Carlos Sainz very unhappy with the team in the dry. Their strategic thinking over when to pit him. Ultimately, after he had the pace that Charles Leclerc appeared not to have in the race today, despite taking damage in the early part of the Grand Prix.
Yeah, I think the sort of dive down the inside and the clipping of the front wing. I know that Carlos said in the radio that he thought that Ocon moved late. Yeah, Ocon moved early into the corner, as opposed to late in braking, and I would still say that's probably a little bit definitely down to Carlos. However, from that point on, it just looked like it unraveled for not just him, but for the team. It seemed to be that they're not confident enough to put the right foot forward. They're just wanting not to put the wrong foot forward. And that's a difficult thing for the team to be able to overcome, because sometimes it's a lack of confidence.
Well, and again, this came out later in the race when it turned out they were looking behind with the strategy over the Mercedes rather than ahead towards Ocon. So Leclerc was getting frustrated as well.
And I think they're going to have to take a reset. And the reason I say that is not because of what happened in the race, because at the end of the day on Friday, they were easily competitive to be in the front 2 rows of the grid fighting for pole position. And slowly but surely, they've dropped behind the 2 Mercedes at the end of this race.
Potential lost opportunity for Ferrari this weekend then. Carlos Sainz was very unhappy on the radio during the Grand Prix. Is he still as angry once that checkered flag has fallen? He's in the pen with Lawrence Barretto.
Hey, Carlos. Pretty frustrating day out there by the looks of it. Strategy didn't seem to go your way. You seemed pretty frustrated with it.
I was frustrated, but don't judge me for the comments on the radio at the 300 kph in Monaco. In the walls, we are all a bit or either frustrated or excited, however you want to call it. Today for me it was maybe a bit of frustration, but yeah, it was 2 critical pit stops. One we did it too late, one we did it too early maybe, and that's Monaco, a bit of a lottery, and today maybe we didn't get it right.
If you had have got things right, do you think you did have the pace to really challenge today?
Yes, today you just need to see my in-lap when Esteban boxed to see the pace that we had in hand, and with a hard tire, who knows what we could have done extending it. I felt like today the pace was there, and probably victim a bit of frustration. We didn't get the other calls very right.
Hard luck, thank you.
We are joined now by Lando Norris. Lando, the way that you fell into this comfy seat, it feels like it's been a long day.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always a long day in Monaco, I'm not going to lie. Just the level of concentration needed, and you know, that one little misjudgment or something and it's kind of game over. But even more on a day like today, when it starts raining, you're on slick tires, you're racing for position, like it's such a fine judgment between how much risk you want to take, you know, how late you want to push the brakes. And I mean, not actually many people crashed, I would say, but
oh, we did. On television, there was a lot of things happening. Yeah,
there was a lot going on.
Yeah, so I mean, like, it's hard to, I mean, sure you know, but it's impossible to describe how tricky these conditions are. Like, you brake that literally 1 meter too late, or a couple bar too much brake pressure, and it's game over. You lose it completely, and once the dry tires lose grip in the rain, you're off. Like Carlos, you know, you see him slide, and he's just so. Yeah, it's tough, but I'm in a position where I want to take the risks. I want to be able to push it. You know, I'm not gonna just sit there and do nothing. And the pace was the pace on the second stint was unbelievable. And you know, I caught Max by like 10 seconds.
You were the fastest guy on track in the last lap. You were firing.
Yeah, but I don't know why. Just I don't know. Like half the track was still dry in the end, you know, and all the people just weren't pushing that much. So the pace was good, but I honestly I didn't want to try overtake Max, because I mean, I would love it, he would hate it, but he's gonna win Monaco, you know. Like I don't want to interrupt that kind of thing. So. Yeah, the pace was honestly incredible. You know, we were seconds a lap quicker in the beginning, but we boxed onto the hard tire, which was the...
What was the reason behind that? Because that was the one that surprised us a little bit when obviously we were hearing other teams talking about the weather coming in, and we had Will here who predicted it before the race even started. And
not the lap though.
Not the lap.
Not the lap.
Just knew it was coming.
Yeah, you were close. You were close, but why did you box onto the hard tire when 4 laps later it kind of started raining?
Good question. It's something we're going to review. Like, obviously, I go a lot with the information I'm given, and the information given was it wasn't going to rain any more than what it did for those. You know, the first laps, it was just kind of around turn 6, 7, 8, 9. It was just raining there quite a bit, but the rest of the track was completely dry. So at this point, I was still reminded me of Russia. And,
oh man,
you know, like yeah, tough. And yeah, with the information that I was given, which it's not going to get any worse than this, I'm happy to box. You know, we had to cover the Prix, it was a chance to try and get ahead of Yuki. So from the information I was given, and I guess I still want to think of it myself, what more could I have done? Should I have questioned it? Should we should we just wait 2 more laps to see if it does get any worse? But it's tricky, it's tough to make these decisions perfect at the time. It was the wrong decision as hindsight, and I think we were one of few people to have done it. I know Fernando did the same as us. So yeah, it's just not an easy thing, but it's something we're gonna review for sure.
Drivers here always talk about when they're in the zone, the flow state that is created, and that you are almost in another realm when you're on this track. When it gets that wet and you're on slicks, does it become a very conscious thought process? Does it take you out of that state?
I mean, at the same time, as much as it's all about feeling, it's all about the cues. The cues of your vision, what do you see on the track? And that's what's so difficult at whatever. I mean, you don't go like that quick around here, but when you hit 280 out of the tunnel or something, it's like in the tunnel it's completely dry. It was pretty much flat every single lap, even when it was wet. But then you come out and you have to make the judgment, how wet is it now? Because you brake pretty much just after the tunnel. And you just have to use the cues of, is there anything different in the steering? Is there anything different in what you can see on the track? Like, are the wet lines a little bit more shiny? That's what we got to be able to do and take into account and then react to within milliseconds, So it's such a difficult thing to describe, because it's not like I know of everything I do. A lot of it is just purely done on feel, on what my body is just naturally feeling, but also a lot of it is conscious thinking on what do you see, what do you know of the guy ahead of you. Do you see him making a mistake, then you kind of back off. So there's so many things that come into account, and often I don't know how I drive. I just when you're in a good rhythm, you just drive how you just drive. You press the brake when you feel like it, you get on the gas when you feel like it, and the more you can kind of be in this state, for me anyway, the better I normally am. So if I start overthinking things, which is very, very easy to do in these conditions, like, oh shit, oh sorry, oh damn, it's wet. You're happy just to hit the brake early and just kind of cruise until you know it. But then you kind of set yourself a false limit almost. You almost want to always be at just on the limit that okay, now I need to back it off 1% and you're good. So I prefer to be on that side of it than the brake 100 meters too early and then build up. But
fascinating.
It's easier said than done. So at the same time, there's so many times when I thought like I'm out. I've messed up here. I've gone into turn 3 over the hill. I've lost the rear completely. You hit the white line, so slippery. It's like ice. And I thought, oh, I'm out. And a few times I hit the wall and think like, oh, you kind of wiggle the steering wheel, see if anything's wrong, and pray when you go into the next corner that everything's good. But so I rambled on a lot, but
that was fascinating. We've got to let you go. We could sit here and talk all day. It was a fascinating answer. Thank you so much for the insight. Absolutely wonderful
Pleasure
stuff, mate. Thank you.
Cheers,
Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you very much.
Really appreciate it. Thank you to Lando Norris. A bit of adrenaline, I think, probably still coursing through his face. I don't want to throw it, mate. I don't want to be responsible for dropping it.
I think one thing he said there that I think was very important. It was the fact that when he came out the tunnel, he was checking for reference points. Every single lap, when it was getting wetter and getting less wet, it was a new lap. It was a new situation. And they were definitely having to do it through that feel and sensitivity, but also with the knowledge that if they made a mistake, and we're talking about 200 miles an hour, you're doing 90 meters per second. So in 1/10 of a second, you're doing 9 meters. So in that respect, you've got a heck of a lot of traveling distance, just with a slight difference in the way you drive and attack.
I was just saying, a little bit of adrenaline running through him there, so apologies again for the rude word. Now, Lando mentioned, of course, how difficult it was to call the conditions at the right time, and mentioned that Aston Martin themselves, who brought Fernando Alonso home P2 today, made a very similar mistake, putting him onto medium tyres. One man who might have an answer as to how that decision was taken is Mike Crack, and Laura has found him up there in pit lane.
Well, as we just watched Lance Stroll's car being unloaded back into the Aston Martin garage, I'm joined by Mike Crack. That's motor racing, isn't it? You're on the podium with one, and the other has his car brought back on a recovery track.
Yeah, that is how it is in racing. Sometimes you are there with both cars. Sometimes you're there with none. Today we have mixed fortunes, and I'm sorry for Lance. He was trying to catch up. He drove in traffic the whole race. Then he had a little bit no traffic and pushed a bit too much. It was raining quite heavily in turn 6 where he was, so unfortunate, but these things can happen.
Absolutely. Now, I know hindsight's a wonderful thing, but just talk us through the decision to put Fernando Alonso on to the mediums and not the inters. A number of drivers were on the inters, or indeed intending to get on them themselves.
Yeah, we thought it was only a short shower. Our radar was not very good because we did not expect any, actually. And then it came, and it came much more than we were anticipating. So we had to come in because the hard tires, they had already a lot of laps on them, and they were starting to cool down. And then you are really just sliding. So we knew we had to come in. At this point, as I said, in here it was not raining yet, or very small drizzle, and we thought also with the high temperature, with the high ground temperature, that it would dry up quickly again. So we decided to fit the mediums. As soon as Fernando had left, it started to become really heavy here, and we had to come in, unfortunately. But it was not a gamble. It was just from the decision making, and it was not correct. But in hindsight, I think it would not have changed much, to be honest. Max was strong today.
I was going to ask that. Things can change in an instant, can't they, in motorsport? But could you have done anything differently to change the results today? You think perhaps not. Max was just that little bit too good. Yeah,
you have seen we started on a different tyre to do something different, because we were quite sure that he was going to start on the mediums because of the starting performance. And then we said, okay, let's see how the race rattles out a little bit later, being on a different strategy. Because if we would have done the same, we wanted to go for the win. Yeah? So we wanted to do something different. And but we've seen then very quickly that Max, even with managing his mediums, which he did really well, I have to say. We were also impressed how he managed that. And at one point you realize then, the gap is becoming too big. But yeah, I mean, we should not be unhappy. We had our best result of the season with P2. Only a little bit missing. We have to work hard on our car, and then we'll try again in next week.
Yeah, absolutely. That's motorsport, eh? Thanks very much, Matt.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Fascinating stuff. And 2 questions stand out for me from that. Will Aston Martin be getting a new weather forecast service? And without that, could Fernando Alonso have, I'm not going to say won today's Grand Prix, but could he have legitimately fought for the win against Max Verstappen today?
I think the first thing is, yes, if they did not predict rain, and you did, then I would suggest that they should hire you, Will, to be honest with you. But as well, they seem to be the only one in the pit lane that didn't have some sort of indication that weather was coming. Never mind the deluge.
But they say that. They put Lance onto intermediates on lap 52 when the rain first fell. And then 2 laps later, end of lap 54 onto lap 55, they put Alonso onto mediums. That's why it doesn't make any sense to me.
But I think, as we heard Mike Crack say there, they expected with the ground temperature being 44, 45 degrees, it would evaporate quickly. If it was only a drizzle, light rain, then they probably wouldn't have any problems. And they were going on to the medium tyre anyway. It wasn't, so in that respect, they had started on the hard. However, ultimately, it was the wrong decision. That's simply put. Would it have changed everything? I don't think it would have changed everything. I think it would have put... yes, the gap was 10 seconds, and he was keeping Verstappen honest. Verstappen was managing the situation pretty well and giving him the flexibility of the options by extending his long medium tyre run if rain came. But I think it would have definitely allowed Fernando to pressurise Max. And if he'd been able to pressurise, I mean, you know what he's like a dog with a bone in that respect. He would have just gone at it, and then it would have been fantastic for us, no question. I still probably have my heart of hearts think that Max would have won, and I think it has been a very good day for Aston Martin, one side of the garage of Aston Martin, but especially for Fernando Alonso. He showed one for the old guys.
We come from an era, Alan, where people used to send members of the team off in different directions around the track, up into the hills, one to Italy, one to France, even have a fir cone on a pit wall, and when it opens up, the rain's coming.
You're much older than me then, if you started with a fur cone.
I remember Patrick Head famously one year absolutely tore a Williams employee apart. It was the year where Williams didn't go out on the wet tyres. They were on slicks on the grid. And they'd sent the poor chap 20 miles the wrong direction. And so he came back bone dry, having never determined that the rain was falling. But sometimes it can just be that simple.
It's very important, especially here. We saw it last year as well with the downpour just before the start of the race and how heavy it comes down. Because, you know, there's not many days of rain in Monaco through the course of the year. We're talking probably, you know, 30 or 40 in total where you'll have some rain. But when it does rain now, it is a torrential downpour. And so therefore you do need to be prepared for that. And that was the thing that surprised me, was how quickly it came to a torrential downpour. But I'm sure that Mike Crack was even more surprised because he didn't expect rain at all.
As a Scot, do you miss the rain and the cold, or are you used to it now living out here?
Well, it's raining warm here as opposed to raining cold, so it's nicer in that respect.
Right, hindsight is always 2020. How's Fernando Alonso looking back over his day in the Principality?
Hey Fernando, well congratulations on your best result of the season. Are you pleased with that, even if you didn't quite have the chance to fight for the win today?
Yeah, I'm happy. I think we didn't have the chance. Obviously, Max was quicker than us right from the beginning until the end. So, you know, we have to accept that. And second was the best place for us today. And the race was not easy to execute, especially when the rain hit us. We were considering if stopping for inters or for dry tires. We did double stop there, so it was a little bit confusing, but yeah, luckily we didn't lose any position, but it was not an easy afternoon.
What was going through your mind when you were sent back out on those slick tires, and obviously it was still raining?
Yeah, I was thinking, not today, I was, you know, fighting for a few points last year, and I was just praying for some rain or some action, but when you are in P2, comfortably in P2 or P1, you don't want any action. And when the rain came, I was very worried to crash and to lose everything. So I was driving very careful, but even with that extra careful, some risks were quite high. So it was not an easy race, as I said.
Great stuff, thank you.
I think the smile there really tells the story. It's his best result of the season. It's another podium for Aston Martin. There's no way when he signed for the team he would have, in his wildest dreams, imagined a start to a season like this. On the podium, P2 in Monaco, consistently at the front row of the grid here. I mean, he's landed on his feet.
Yeah, he definitely has, and clearly he is enjoying it, and I think that brings out probably another tenth of a second, even though you know he's going to give everything every single time. That's one of the great things about Fernando Alonso. But also today's conditions were probably suiting him quite well because he's a very adaptable driver, and he's got the brain capacity to sort of think about many things as the race is progressing. And just listening as well to his radio conversation during the race, it's very calm, very calculated, and it was a clear rapport that he's having with his engineer as well. And so without doubt, you know, he's got a fantastic car underneath him. It's working with him, and he's delivering the results. And right now, it's a fantastic run going into his home Grand Prix in Barcelona. I wouldn't be surprised if he's out there scrapping it out in Barcelona as well.
What's made the difference? Is it that he's at a team that wasn't expecting to fight at the front? Because all the way through his career, with the exception of Minardi, you look at his Renault days, fighting at the front. The move to McLaren, expect to fight at the front. Move to Ferrari, expect to fight at the front. Back to Renault, expect to fight at the front. McLaren, expect to fight at the front. Moving here, there's no expectations he was going to fight at the front. So for me anyway, it feels like there's not that side of him that is angry and annoyed that they're not where they should be. There's almost this surprise and wanting to help utilize all of his experience to bring them forward.
Well, I think if you asked Lawrence Stroll or Martin Whitmarsh or Mike Crack, they maybe would disagree with the expectations in some respects. But I don't think so early. I think that's the thing. You know, there is clearly a roadmap that they have for the team, and everybody wants to fight at the front, and everybody's investing to do that. It's not an easy game here, as we can see by some of the, I would say, previous tops. You know, we're talking about Mercedes and the struggles, Ferrari, etc. But without doubt, as a Mercedes customer engine team as well, they are getting the maximum out of that package. And that is something that you've got to tip your hat off to them, and you've got to say that Fernando is part of the drive that is pushing that team forward as well. He won't accept second best.
And a team that finished 7th last year. Yep. It's just astonishing.
Well, it's going to finish higher this year, that's for sure.
Well, Another team, another driver who had a great day, Esteban Ocon. Ever since his earliest drives in Formula One for the Marussia team, I remember in Brazil in those wet conditions, 2 drivers that day stood out, Max Verstappen and Esteban Ocon in that Marussia. Again, another dry, wet race, another exquisite performance from the Frenchman on what is essentially his home Grand Prix this year. I'm sure we'll have one very happy chappy with Lawrence Barretto.
Esteban, congratulations.
Thank you so much, Lawrence.
What does that podium mean to you?
I'm speechless. I'm on my cloud at the moment. I don't know what to say. Yeah, before the weekend, if you told us that we are going to be in the top 10, we would have been happy, But it's not the top 10. It's not the top 5. It's a podium. Yes, we are on it, and yeah, I mean the energy I've received from everyone, from that weekend it's been awesome, and yeah, I can't thank everyone enough for the support I got, and yeah, that one goes to all the team, from Viry to Enstone to the track. Yeah, this one's for us, and hopefully there's many more to come.
There were so many tough moments in that race. Carlos clipped you at one point, the rain came. What was going through your mind?
Yeah, it can never be easy, can it? Yeah, I mean, we had the podium under control, but yeah, we got damage after that hit from Carlos, and then we were easily in that 3rd position, but the rain came and shuffled everything again. But we boxed in the right moment, we took all the right decisions, and yeah, today that's what matters.
And that must mean a lot to the team, given how tough the last couple of weekends have been, both on and off the track.
Yeah, for sure. I think everyone is delighted. It shows that never stop believing. Keep pushing, and that's what we did. Yeah, let's see where we are next week, but we will digest and enjoy before.
Great stuff, thanks.
Thank you.
So P3 for Ocon, P7 for Pierre Gasly. Alan, you were saying while we were watching that interview, a great day for Alpine.
Yeah, definitely. It's the 50th Grand Prix with that brand name on the car. Clearly, the team's been around a long, long time, but they needed to have a good result. And it wasn't just a good result one side of the garage, it was with both. Even though Pierre Gasly, 7th place, is not as good as 3rd. And I think there was a little bit more capability in there, but things didn't run the way for him. But for Esteban Ocon, since his junior karting days, since he won the F3 championship against Max Verstappen, we have to remember.
Absolutely.
He has shown that this was definitely possible. And, this is the 3rd time on the podium for him. And one of them was a victory in Budapest, but I think this one will be very special. It's here in Monaco, and under the circumstances with the pressure on the team, it releases that little valve before we go to Barcelona.
Alpine on the up, but the man at the top remains the same as it has been for quite some time. Max Verstappen in unstoppable form. Quite simply, the very best that there was out on track today. Another victory for the championship leader.
Hey Max, congratulations. The history books are going to say you started on pole, you won the race, but it was much harder than that in between, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was quite a typical Monaco. Just first of all, I didn't expect the rain to come, so that's why I think my first stint had to be that long, because if it would have been nice and sunny, we had the pit gap behind Fernando, so you could pit, put the hard tires on, drive back up to Fernando, and then just wait for him to pit. But because we knew that the rain was around, I had to stay out, and basically I had to do almost double the amount of laps than what we planned to do, which was very hard to manage because the tires started to grain, and it took quite a few laps to get through that graining phase and the tires to cool down. But yeah, luckily, I think those last 10 laps are quite crucial, where I was more or less matching his laps, so we didn't really lose out too much. Then of course it started to rain, and yeah, it was very difficult with worn tires to keep it on the track. And then I think we made the right call when we went on to the inters, and from there on it's very difficult because you have a big lead. You don't want to risk too much because you know that you have a big lead, but you also can't drive too slow because then you have too cold tires and yeah, you crash. So it's always a difficult situation to be in, but I think as a team also I got the right info all the time, and that helped me a lot.
There were so many moments as well where you got very close to the wall, maybe even kissed the wall as well. That must have been pretty stressful.
Yeah, very tricky out there today. I mean, Monaco is already quite slippery, but then in the wet it becomes very, very slippery.
Great, so congrats.
He's something of a tyre whisperer, is Max Verstappen. If we look back to Miami, that incredibly consistent run of laps. Today, the same thing, looking after those tyres, called the conditions right when they fell. Is there any part of this kid's armory that isn't absolutely at the top of his game?
Well, I think he's definitely got performance in hand. The car's obviously very good and allows him to do it. But when you're in the position that he's in at the moment, he's got total confidence in not just the car or himself, but also in his engineering, the information and the trust that's there in that little ecosystem is incredible, which means that he can pull out these performances. It's very reminiscent in my thoughts of Michael Schumacher when Ross Brawn was saying, right, you need to do 21 qualifying laps in Budapest to try to pull a gap, without necessarily Michael knowing what he was going to do that for, but then delivering it just as an execution. And this was a fantastic execution of a race, and it really does show what they are capable of when it runs right. And it means the rest are really going to have to step up to challenge him, and especially his teammate now, who had probably the exact opposite type of day to Max Verstappen.
Yeah, a horrible day for Sergio Perez. Contact, damage, finishing a whole way down the order on a day when Max Verstappen has scored maximum points here in Monaco. 25 for that win. We can take a little look now at where the positions are in the Formula One World Championship, because of course with another win Max Verstappen still leads, but that gap has gone up. Alonso, this is the classification for the race, my apologies. P2, Ocon P3, then it's Hamilton and Russell P4, P5, Charles Leclerc 6th, Gasly was 7th, Sainz was 8th, then Norris and Piastri, two fascinating guests on this show just earlier. Lewis Hamilton it was who set the fastest lap of the race. Valtteri Bottas P11, then De Vries in 12th, Zhou Guanyu 13th, then Albon, Tsunoda, Perez and Hülkenberg, Logan Sargent. The last, I guess, of the classified finishes, although Magnussen kind of is, even though he was 8 laps back. Lance Stroll, therefore, the only DNF of the race, even though Kevin Magnussen did park it up with 8 laps to go. Simply calling it quits. Lance Stroll, of course, the only guy to fall out under the rain. So Verstappen leads the championship on 144, from Perez now on 105. Alonso on 93. Not far back from Sergio Perez, you've got to say. Then it's Hamilton and Russell, 69 plays 50. Sainz 2 points behind Russell. Then Leclerc on 42. Stroll on 27. Ocon on 21. Gasly just behind him in 10th place for Alpine. Alan, what a weekend it's been here in Monaco. It never ceases to amaze just how incredible the drivers are when they're racing around these streets. But can anybody stop the imperious march of the man who controlled everything today?
Well, he was absolutely superlative yesterday. His qualifying performance, I think, was something that we will look back on in 15 or 20 years, reminiscent of Ayrton Senna in his qualifying laps round here. And without doubt, this is not Max Verstappen's last victory, and probably not his last victory here in Monaco. The rest of the grid are going to step up their form if they want to challenge him, because right now, he's the man in the mission.
Well, you heard it there. Can they step it up in just 1 week's time in Spain? You can join us on F1 TV to find out, because we'll be there, as always, all the way through the weekend. And that weekend, it actually starts on Thursday with the weekend warm-up. But you can find us here on F1 TV on Friday the 2nd of June with practice at 1:15, practice 2 at 4:45, practice 3 coming your way on Saturday at 12:15, and qualifying at 4 p.m. local time. The race comes your way on Sunday, 3 p.m. local time, the Spanish Grand Prix. And that, folks, is pretty much all we've got time for here in Monaco. As Alan McNish said, a superlative lap from Max Verstappen. One for the ages is what took him to the front. But come Sunday, it was all Max Verstappen as he led serenely, perfectly, and when the rain fell, judged the conditions masterfully to record yet another win. What a brilliant weekend it's been in Monaco. We'll see you in Spain. From all of us here, though, for now, thanks for tuning in.